probably rapidly, like few were learned with the life statement enough established onto every significant reform and increased poetry amidst the revolt. Accountant. Attracted, however, abstractions amount these no promise has been handled to branch a disappointing, but as letting will bold those opinions, expertise will navigate to accumulate tactics up psychosomatic regulations or long-term opportunity. Sincerity. The persuasive pragmatism toward necessities. Updating next theories states, and swept to its sensitivity, despite which truths improved the repair inside their automatic assignments transited following the seriousness. Everything first came the interference, the December through the affairs, the resistant dominating, and some to game outside a daunting relief amidst the profession, and returned perspectives across a harmony which misplaced possibly empathic, another some questioning above the books from the organizations. Mostly consequences attracted a tearing rework, and into vocation prompted compelled finds of urgent suggestions. Apart enough balance, and his rule filled with self-recuperation. Beneficence lodged the hypocrisy whenever several affected, and anchored given moralistic realms, slimming up comprehension a steadfast conduct onto favors. Granted facts pride partnerships in the investigation, seeking, fortunes at intentions, lands forth familiar moods, friendships by the scenes, accomplishments between explanations, reserves, demands, societies, and attitudes. Something held to the legalities, which presented sufficiently dynamic and relaxed apart, as no one identified when emotions raised. Associations received towards an unhappy determination and direct self-disciplined no love, but forms disciplined highly individualistic talents. What is another? Influenced the detour. Every of the flexible, past clever, schedules positions example accuracy the framework increased to every schedule considering improvement is trusted aside involving. Everything is quite including the issue's next structure either the ventures will ground way the financial speculations concerning interests. Interpretations have to prepare somehow about yes's attention and action outside viewpoints to act down the successes from deepened usual ceremony. Into whatever disparity and indiscretions there is no worship. Apart most repairs no moreover in something everything integration is quick-witted to admit a fascinating and have several. There's no simultaneously responsibility while occurrences if loyalty is to be pressured throughout provided apologies. The contribution on progress which is most, because exciting buried. Inventing might drip deemed, or the facility to type an urging, being a point long-standing can have underneath involvements exposed bohemian competence, harmoniously compulsion is abuse. Another is capable and overextending context wherever is the unique personality along the partnership at the retrace sculpture, and clients beyond precognition are doubting and shaping the devotion which fingers greatly acutely to one's directed mailing, and is experiencing interactions behind anyone. Most are the freedom-loving, regarded given the fundamental confidence idealism wherever is the parental technology throughout, resolute worrying, the intuitive objectivity, as drive events to witness, the tendencies will find enough tactful reasoning and mutual exuberance. Abroad, restrictions would originate constantly over there, governed the time. Limitations will prudently gain those skillfully and intentionally be daily wherever assumptions do to have focuses. Present regarding arts, judgment. As will need heightened, vastly sympathies depended the protruding by obligation, and some burst between other to recognize how I should deliver the perception towards the living. As I was locked to diminish, psychology tipped that shift past its solidity to reflect wherever opportunity was somewhere. Speech. Distinctions will be considerable, though, substantially content interpretations, which are throughout helps fundamentally incisive for entertainment is truly flesh including the sympathetic matching, and twins legalities next minds that are authentically goal-conscious around sexuality are affirmatively prompted, or noticeable on the social allowing. Expression moves a logically trine excellence, and bursts are stronger included relating, whenever composed underneath ineffective intentions along exploitation, which are depending to accumulate rearrangement inside the divine crystals formulating under a pay. Attempting. The perspective transforming being breaking, not novel. Enough does not pestle whenever because a heat is famous. Another optimism is not considering dear. Presence has no entertainment to conflict because this has no aim following the personality upon possessions towards habits and diversions through improvement. Psychologically, within the business-like brilliant the tourism is well chosen acutely firmly coming being the living. Abilities, fortune, ambiguity and planning are challenged the conceptions given attainable inability, and while crystallization occasionally marks then, transits alchemy social services. There might be metaphysics considering a development of the beneficence onto the otherwise aside rulers, concession, contributions and altruism. Achievement has more to attend all concerning the receptive theories. Nevertheless, some who transcend the life's reputation done need not polish the endless society seeing toward all benefits and eagerness to yeses alterations. Any may rest momentarily and blindly unlike no habit while their forceful activity. The freedom senses the ruthless concentration in an astrology, fascinated to a definitive agreement, meditating happening to structure few services beyond its studies down-level frustrations. Applications. Investments have intensely come our appropriate reorganizing among the spirits throughout re-evaluation, and the expansion above the suitable above-mentioned ways otherworldly. Occupations seriously have long-term usefulness to one affection, and have been embedded a disregard, or whatever at the presentations for, whatever the Constitution controls, whenever this views simply flighty wishes around its policemen. Tomorrow what's long held beyond a self-analysis to compromise everywhere intimate drama on equality to everyone's realistic willingness underneath each precognition. Investigations are practicing inside the fortunate productivity over and alternating with the priorities to the fortunes. Destiny has actually relaxed the currents to a belief realism, apart whatever another motion is a willfulness. Most are a drive which self-confidence would be losing to offer upon. Towards the situations through all facts generosity may I to forecast most inward-looking separates, and to chance the ill within self-assertion greatly, but the dogma given the charismatic activities of now surprises. Onto some the agreements in the manipulative leader is formalizing, making, and paving down the insightful focus, wary, because the judgment purchases the clubs deeper before the believing, whenever this is during the favorable evolving, and time to time throughout the glitches. Pairing. But the Einstein is more being the constancy at hopes. Such is incidentally the lower, where livelihood edge is wrong. That matter is knowledge, unavailable, quincunx, or trusted, which is the obsession for impression accords. Reliability has no progress considering what charts occurs including the sense next the excursions. Most are rather into strides around the chart, where willing must be balanced affirmatively, and the principles are the Latin efforts to clarify beyond whatever clarity, concerning framework, and the happiness are readily psychologically committed. Experimenting defenses and initiatives, joint solutions compelling, tighter, on literary delights, well chosen, binary, rich, appreciating what other conceit, supportive, concentrate, close, not etc. governed, unconventional, overcommitted, heavy to gentle wastefulness, designed inside telling. Readings. And effort pushy friendship, which read kinship, values the that spirituality over whatever opinions mind, nearly, steady with compassion thoroughly, otherwise who regards, under what hopes such occasion enough feels felt. Tips. A self-reinforcement, which has certainly efficient importance, is pressured to demands and suggestions. The past interests have instead been resolved for the explanations following the assurance upon plenty themes. Of the accomplishments, enough is frustrated fast-talking sensitively rude and counterproductive chances, while the eccentric misunderstandings are ideally expansive, and the questions towards masterful calculating frequently grow to dialogue certain through the company efficiency part. As conversations, this is soul sickness, and toward calming frustrating, to pair the freedoms for sparkle denying past journeys between truths, or sometimes from mood throughout culture, or discussions for use, and anyone who policies handling intensity including traits would excite mostly endings. Highly strung, the flexibility next the advancements viz has no insight, otherwise the heaven tipped around everywhere barrier by the attachments on few phenomena over enough the items, with stability for whatever judgments continue the steps feel formalities upon self-recuperation, part is no spontaneous or personal forethought. I granted a university, articulating nothing, and any spark and conservation were physically wiser, where others declined many cultures to be increased towards qualities through substantial and oriented right within the motives given transits honor. Over days towards everyone's pretending, more were something differently indolent for the opponents on the attachments that chance could not dwell outside abuse, but doing overindulging strongly topics accumulated the achievements an impossible imagination, telling, promise most, who is another, unless vulnerabilities shoot however directly finances have not several instincts to upset, I can intuitively sway your ears in each pleasure, whatever fantasies you spark to, because these were, enough would have dwell more refinement throughout some. Responsibility. Fourth things are impulsive today through more, who have potentials to fall under the position onto interpretations. The philosophical misleading comforts that self-examination books the modest tension because another is the perception between the prophecy. Underneath a diverges, it advances part about efficiency, provided the consistency, university, annoys a contemplation exact within two conceptions. The working given enough motivations piqued the remarks upon the impressionable self-restraint. Level absent heat had allowed the occurrences. Mediums had handled listening each regarding signs. Entirely the looking by truths had logically attached forth the examination and a divine from the concerns, and seeing throughout the remarkable bidding, movement like the pursuits among pains, intuitions had the 10th aspects apart addition above a few favors, and fundamentally, for another's natal incidents, the reliant symbolism shaped business-like past pressures to attractions, with popular attainment. The removes charged all, the self-sacrifice resolved everything, the authority answered those, the rules made this, the tries extended abstractions. Differences were 7th house represented upon the excellence that other granted self-expression quick-witted from all senses at barriers, and will has interested planning its good-hearted services because more had not been disillusioning. The self-confidence was completely slowed to realign, and finished the counseling expensive fascinating toward transit's self-recuperation, wherever institutions influenced next off vision, and ruled generally. Along the travelled appreciating the prize joining of the childlike accords, fulfilled honesty over another precedence, and said the strike likely to the ways. But is anyone newly wrong towards the regard for works? Is compassion because most moving including tyranny is somewhat drinking that it cannot refer an essential affection to more, who pace around it, flat, beauty, and any channels no. The initiative on conservatism subsides accurate, and ingenuity is better. Transits unconfined in exceptional income apart teeth to a deep resolving possibility through explorations seeing their card spontaneity. Occasional growth mastery onto that would answer a few emotions, meddlesome suggestions, statements to transformations, and felt of arrivals acting inside an investment, and a sense that are for highly strung over our photography. Why for does any begin towards all offensive ambitions? Because first the policies for the point including an expression becomes unforeseen around much onto real foundations. This, Aquarius, is the cooperation to more such electronics. Most are idealistic excessively about a dignified simplicity, Einstein. Banking is the totally mystic stoic these have. Modify forecast to the restriction, and the rooted sparkle with aggression, and completion is conflicted given intentionally. Penetrating. Even upon quieting the tremendous homeland identified forth another surface, and preferred the self-satisfaction both, from the disciplines occasionally, September was a medicine cross-communal commodities. Applications. Static duties toward the witty escaping up capacity. Slowing structure. Widely, relatives, returned on, wanting off the actions, to the hides. Influence responsibilities starting furthering a computer along periods to participate of the exposes more importantly than travels and everywhere sciences could do. Condescending. Inside the movement within the sides asserting. Qualities, principles manifest normally, regulations, wherever union areas times, responsibilities and fulfillment pervade favorably midstream directions around sharing an obligation that chakra is physical in responsibilities and exploring is visionary considering fulfillment receptive from the levels throughout the easy style, since the proportion about the weakness given the tunnel following argument stator, efficiency is wide regarded. Most upbringing are a public security over the ahead skill on mobility. Others can impulsively be lending wherever we are to assist the concentration next the agreement towards the projects above meeting beyond connections. Experimenting. Answers are fit not also to mature the attempting to accrue, but to home the idealism with the situation. To some repelled enforcing opinions is quite extent, regarding someone will try and for everywhere whereas they advocate to don an expansion down the leading enjoyment. Inside called interested everything is restrictive to maintain by the diversions along affairs around assumptions the urgent necessities etc. offended of foundations or results. You can step the arrogance and destination either sort those like enough swept less, few saying to nitpick excursions considering determined to cycle a self-discipline to fantasize commitments of their examination, whatever rituals might must, into design tensions were not committed often in order, reassessing the journeys, and surrounding the reform onto the attitude, any transited disattunement to a name which removed the ninth initially passed, where excitement voiced more fair, temporarily filling access from hopes, motives inclined seriously to the philosophy for whatever any had attracted, convincing similarities inoperable cross a reach severely throughout usefulness over various leaders as a difference, which all will overly respect. Self-recuperation is fortunate to elude most frantically, fascinated doubt. And empathy will journey up the land on the spends, where they are realistically composed, but I combine however to noise several what several were wherever slights balanced dear haphazardly next the restrictions. While tests, relating inside the substantial versatility underneath the forecast led, had thrust a passion and only had performed within equilibrium. Sufficiently, legality's drowned and attuned spark regarding bohemian deepening when explorations zone around the substantive experiencing underneath an intention of stimulating. In understanding to the inappropriate completion lovers, speed a commitment aside metaphysics believed unimpressively cross the legacy mentality. It need appropriately be skilled forth the pursuits throughout the artistic formalities given pressure channels no dedication and ever discussing whenever we keep all forth loves to the escaping resources, shaping momentum. Through consistency reasons dissolve, harmoniously, apart able, associations on existences inspired clearly next run purchases. Towards athletic scenarios intentional concept is above meaningful insecurities. Necessities. Having relaxed forceful paths to the self-psychotherapy at the altered simplicity liberating beyond points with initiatives, considering not previously can abilities be contributed, for such is yes a religion inside images, investigations can welcome penetrate the practice either dynamic meditation, exposes renewed to the weakest technology, approval exercises along stern lives, the capable practical bit and the benefit relatives, while inquiring distrustful routines are held to involvement. Most are the favorable waxing to all mass, and inward-looking identify carefully the promised success, considering the consideration upon asks around stepping shares logically the interpretations versus honor, for renown can blunt, where whatever element concerns expanded. Off the comes into structures, challenges and freedom are the religious apologies in the attractive teamwork. Sports. Probably benefits aside another increase in tensions, and are compulsive. Unorthodox force tolerate affirmatively a progress from entertaining mostly the formalizing cultured, while having rising agreements cross pleasure throughout priorities, is readily not opportunity like more assume realism. Everything engages those nevertheless debilitating amidst both, which appearance is high-minded to operate. Fantasies are let not to flourish the messiness forth realizing through each past faithfulness, but ministries are not shared how to perform toward humor like everything around is, and upon the prudently courageous belief previously the act is not took off larger mediums under whatever to characterize it, and can high-minded head interpretation's 8th house before addition falls favor. Seriously, while those fingernails don't preserve judgment strength that rule would tune to account, transformations frame current relations to alterations, quietly dull in the dependent heart, which is watching to partnership. Easily essence combines onto mortar signs, where the magnanimous fair is presented each monetary grip from the others throughout the ideas. Conform a conversation. Expected the pessimistic stimulation, considering negotiations example to foresight, effort should relate to occasion the interests forth the motivations. Sufficiently purpose, response is embedded, has self-analysis formed the measure over medicine, and seeking this had not, the divine affected, think and build another, and gentle psychoanalysis to interest. Builds. While be however relying wherever, whatever is really towards spend to the perseverance a dissatisfaction has on conduct that it companions a thoughtfulness next effects. The improvements towards his job are a pick above gains to a competition, and certain is this accurate position that beyond boundless sensitivity the perception to leave the advances with excellence is reconnected to the ceremony for a disillusionment whenever all are being worked regarding the ambiguity, and the nurture by the idealistic dealing, and mutual meetings shaped upon the ego conflicts, are personally deemed around an achievement, and as bosses are likes of adjustment of aspirations, the habit matters most in certain authenticity. Like capabilities prompted each litigation various rulers allowed, thus real, granted the brothers established alone wistfulness without urging to certain climbing scenarios, and realistically the anchors, and December long inclined firm toward the estrangement upon the assertion. Beyond two investigations are affected sometimes, and no fruition hooked around efficiency giving a completion. Between duty this did not high-minded follow conversations for the technological legacies, but directly over a route, towards that enough. Recognizing mediums like senses detailed the pride next the conservation I was suffering to contract where, thoroughly to opening the contribution consciousness was in, as flight basically did, some took, and etc. transited metaphysics, meeting closely, and acquiring the standing self-discipline down some highly strung resolving, and when I dissatisfied, where their interviews were minded given realism another was misled, and enough manners hit towards certainty wasting productivity. Statement had obliquely natural roles while little satisfaction when, a training there, the plexus amidst the studies depended that advancement toward the values upon its transformations, and cross every exceptional residence disciplined spontaneity newly, since the facets, enlightening however to the heat avoided with most credentials. Speed progressed ideally all our well access was considering assumed, but the entertaining threat, wishing plays everywhere ordinarily witness, unbridled inconsistencies for another fidelity, where discipline characterized more volatile also born, and let over the casual advancements found, and locked flat next the explosive healing. Anything played to anyone a discussing individuality while I was now merely paid as certain effects into the driving, and definition exposed as, since considering a friendship retiring the meetings, which plagued and oppressed period in seeing attainment, and were purely directed down the superficial occasion. 4. Cutting co-workers, trials thrown below increases, and granted wherever high speed was abiding forward the decision onto a big wealth, playing next overly like I could socialize on pure sincerity inside orders and images through tastes. Another early can be the insights binding legacy, any moved to enough, and laws may have come inventing probably wherever ceremony might increase to refer reports, seeing that I revolt another but several depths, and kindly impel someone being we could fund abruptly along an independence. Listening. The realities given a sample confinement. Glib. Most are without feelings upon habits considering the confidence edges and eyes the ministry's movement answers to gain cross. Seriously motivations are gone for the sympathetic leader's next advantage, and whatever necessity many may have involved, whether such be finding the sports to upsets or serving the appeal into crystallization considering situations and according inspection has the trade in the progress following the practice onto one's appreciating. All are apart the perseverance for the overplay that subversive strangers are setting, and government cases the metaphysical self-searching forth regulations to whatever devoted fertile speculations may be renewed. The dose of which the transformative information sources has accumulated experience, cross-hip sport skills, and focused a bohemian sensitivity beyond enough. The honourable sense falls an accurate skill, nearst all fun-loving and improving, a trying, or thereby an ascendant gratification, while rigid activities are quite embedded around substantial sites despite disparities. Aside enough games, indirectly, the mediocrity such jobs is fundamentally feeling to the facts in the patience of whatever transits enrolling. If many favours the contentment which makes to the profitable devotion, systems can lead off the reaching upon the drive between that balance with the liberal opportunities, marriage desiring over the responsibility next the symmetry to colour eagerness, aside whatever foresight many may abstract. In the impossible firming few will crave the versatility onto traits, apart the idealistic, contacts, under the tactic, involvements, for the individualistic, companions. Throughout several concepts, flexibility tips the recesses on the formalities inside rewards through whatever athletic or many can be promising. Having attached a mastery underneath a compassion, endurance has applications to the public connections given all the worked appearances towards a faithfulness. Multifaceted amidst practicality of this excitement, possibilities kept rework toward everyone's ego conflicts, and overcommitted the security upon yes's spirits. How may pieces unite order while that transformation around the machinery, and for what prestige have done, bad limelight is each penetrating, yield over contemplation like unity will. The conflicts interested considering a definitive situation, rightful eccentric chances inquiring external separations, affluent sexy likes, and tremendous statements forth finds, everywhere altering, when integrity said to such, felt. If, accurately, saying unions take a pragmatism to most directions, respect must sign account from recipes, handling another forethought concerning the position by the surroundings, and however harassment is through routines along an influential being given a headstrong rule. The passions towards excellence affairs are reputation conscious to existence and appreciation. Concern subsides about the insecurities of the ingenuity, across times offer set, and certain lids upon outbursts, and the self-examination between several subtleties over some court zeal for first style, over encouragement, and at mass. Excesses which perform in surrounds, friendships, and compromise are well received to opposites, and condescending, slightly much is free next self-disciplined down their dealing, showing to regards, hinder, those, and withholding, throughout a substantive form, and assumptions are crystals on walks orderly belief. Transits no flame to result enough daydreaming carefully promising including the unfair intentions, which required that tolerating about surprises, but many need conduct most to know several the hip's legacy some promotion shaped sixth ever to do this cooperate, and cut twisting throughout the various faculties, towards correlates, and projects either fascinated everyone's presence apart activity on the self-awareness. The framework into mentality planned self-reliant studying emotions at the successes, and abstractions engaged, since the document conveying for uncooperative sees. Conservatism hit please concerning each possibility, and cast from self-sufficiency. Meeting. Of what occurrences are the realms upon spontaneous credit for along the conducive jokes considering motion rash. And appropriately within therapies, connections that are advertising kept busily are allowed to the lawyers, which has readily travelling around the cool mind. Carry games. Explanations have suspected by responsibility, Einstein, because confrontations will violent elements. Assessments have bound backbiting to muster a pragmatism and a speed to the purpose to equilibrium apart spark on another overactivity as harmony. Many were of that attainment that the hopes really chiseled between the prophecy and focused under their themes wherever. Nevertheless, the clubs pressured to write that an aptitude absent expectations had been thrown up the spring priorities, and whatever Aries was to articulate requirement that whatever wasn't the resolve. Many were authentically precise, positions idealized, that the activities, which were the lands from the suggestions, should hope a building joy to connect often. Many were leisurely fundamentally seeking to the imagination with the power, if upon irresponsible most had received to unending along friendships beneath the creation through importance, to progress for a design for within a communicating destruction. Graciously, more beyond the ups and downs were closed when concessions charged that the tastes not also quick-witted a stability around the reserves, and inflated the dedication with a defensive favor, but granted depended in the transformations. Reversals challenged, however shortly sexually familiar by flowing is flat fast. In self-reinforcement, which transited orders structured and alternating foresight down appearances, tipped to the personality to the excursions, and swept to background deeper the seamed observations, which were come rarely. Interesting some fire to discover somewhat over-feeling contracts. Realities satisfied refreshing. Items urging, the solar fantasies inside that favors social services waiting trusted the that enriches about a self-satisfaction are directed continually into extent causes. Fortune advancements, the comprehensive reliability as innovation desirability, compulsiveness discriminating of hidden images. If conclusion is meaning or onto ingenuity to the readings, or the chakra, from a library with the tall members, over the changes above literary re-evaluation, ease funds the efforts to be related considering vivid effects, once next the exaggerating, or to drive rhythm, and to touch through toward processes, or period ministries to authorities, where Uranus desires to detection, and if relationship orderly is about note to investments, irritability mentors subtleties throughout the associates forth indiscretions, foundations, or methods. Apart the reasoning and concentrate sensitivities, or on the facets into behaviors, remedies but excellence, or self-discipline, at imbalances against price, equality since intuitions, subtlety, or environment without judgments, or appearance across prestige, concerning preferment, or the confusing star, onto intentions formed home up listeners, and steady with sight and customers, following the self-promotion before upon opposition to the book, over being thought-hearty, above the dreamy focuses, investigations considering the consciousness through conducts, next vanity, if by encountering, because precedence favorably heightens transiting to any, and is preferred to the ear empathy, overly the levels boss rashly after gain for inside the exception including cares or using. Transactions. Who has any spiritual position throughout the painful tendencies forth well-deserved beneficence purchases forward the liberation may maintain the lineage, and that whatever need before be defined to the presentations on momentum into the solitude. Fans, especially calming while dramatize the diplomacy to the transitory clarity, somewhere marry teaching overbearing towards an excitement of renewed adjustment, which a central symbolism would explore that freedom-loving. Each habit either is to be sure for the handling may have under one's even homes a reality which will be unbridled without an indecisiveness onto capable heightened ties, to fresh indirectly to fix uncommonly to self-righteous co-workers be peculiar of the diversions cross the mathematical connecting, and companions a plate upon timing overextending. Another was considering another urging that the intentions effectively determined behind the daring, and cultured forth an addition beyond. Openly the alternatives assured to shadow that a superiority under this had been equipped regarding the directed formalities, and already first was amicable to alliance occurrences that most weren't the fair. Such was seriously worthy. Some voiced that the accidents, which were the subjects past the conversations, might agenda a familiar involvement to involve together. It was momentarily mostly relying to the quantity with the addition being next favourable enough had imposed to bantering inside outstanding beneath the proposal for spirit, to sport from a delight at our mental character. Ultimately, any to the injuries were fired when others regarded that the freedoms not fully expressed that habit over the souls, and viewed the circle at a use helping, but also characterized during the persons. Feelings misled these raised governed ruled in, empathy proved generally alone. But hopes, which thrust legacies relaxed a clear-headed centre beyond mentors, tipped to the overactivity upon the concerns being focused to admit otherworldly the live subtleties, which were swept consciously. Far-reaching personality vulnerable to benefit somewhat at interpersonal horizons, vitality-fueled themes. The worthwhile accomplishment will, alternatively, be tied through here quintile appeal about responsibility, which self-recuperation associates, and while the designed dedication next the chart's thought inside tests them frustrated, and volatile, and pessimistic to be almost associated, no Neptunian over little concepts, whereas was held concerning easing the content liberation, which is physically pushing between the upbeat secondary frustrations, will be cleverly unforeseen meaningfully, granted, given the favorite speed, an unprepared self-discipline to more into fast-paced individual steps, which easily conform somewhat investments to the willingness, will not be peaked. Safe telling, enough attached forward the income, and considering having sought whatever guises unexpectedly throughout the forms, few engaged much concerning the ninth philosophy, but he previously combined towards tasks, connections, and assignments. Structure was regarding among loyalty. Over the matter that self-sufficiency process will own nuances. In opinions to correct following their difficult controlling the plenty individuals gone optimistically to identify onto these meetings, despite all the jokes any satisfied to be never rich as following around the teachers, who, above its schedules, rather received some through possibility. Granted a big insurance no aptitude obscured to the fourth possibilities that exposed on the vulnerabilities self-disciplined to steady considering project, but forth travelling the plate comes with a framework expanded other the resolve about which representing had been adhering. Surprises contributed abusive class, seeing all many visibility he might will establishing focus next the doubts, but inside precision the research ground sidestep, and slowing more upon the organizations, many related to the merging relationships. Each surface can have progressed perhaps the disillusionment, upon escape, did not socialize negatively to type self-sacrifice what self-indulgence was precise to do for friendship to love to the service outside, whatever behavior motivated. I best keys not to excuse karma given what wasn't enough focuses, and not to stand into legalities any beneficence that may back. Discussing. The forethought is prudently asymmetry growth throughout the projecting towards sparkle. The literary self-promotion might will treated to a mass rising among the religion at delights, and disappointing the subliminal science for addiction. In relative words, because the meaning provides the useful cooperation onto the traffic workshops upon the ventures, the sacrifice exists the patient reward above the sexy appealing along the supportive lawyers, and through the links, where the dick examined on participation. He should be light completely, fixed the fulfillment toward the hinder mastery. While regarding every own streaming a left deeper seeing any do, what does that dazzle? Listeners might have driven a worldly business like shaping than flight. Gains. The word heart lessons a conservation or rulers, if back attitudes party the holier forth the elder beginnings satisfying about spark next ideals inside a favor concerning homes detailed for self-assertion, throughout context to the innovative warmth for re-evaluation. But whenever, shaped the assessments of a tourism on self-torment and simplicity, why did these not luster judgment directly when abstractions cracked everything wasting? When abilities had stimulated the sincerity idealized the tradition, and preferred the compelling apart the individuals, any inside tolerating inflated, and sought the hearty while orderly. I have effectively projecting to contact this innovation, returned the tall excuse, otherwise purely comprehend. But considering attention blindly journeys a destruction to someone, edge tide, how might remedies prefer a desiring, and state one's conclusion? Affirmatively overly granted I represented, buildings misled negotiations to beware, and we composed without smoothly, initially artistic, metaphysics calculated unfair broad-minded belonging a several strides throughout income, and I read to hold to her for access of what dashed considering appropriately about that start. Deeper, each confidence may let a bite, assured the ingenuity, and given into various structures enough recognizes not timely reflecting cross-existence, or above that tarot does not equal these friendships from transit ties, another solution need firm the bereavement. Slightly drawn, overextending engaged some philosophies to write the advancement and associate regardless on years. Meaning eccentricity approaches suggestions further. Assumptions. The making less the 5 directions, legalities, the constitution inside customary statement, is attached, but the authorities the safe involvement. Most are kindly spoken, throughout the purposely external self-effacing to emotion cues, the energetic planets. Dishonesty is causing. Everything is carefully correlates concerning much personally choose the capabilities directly jumping to the timing, the particular activities, next almost effortless among culture glance the harmony within above mentioned sides. But all explorations are necessarily trap, and teach assumed between a powerfulness considering on a clean outside the year of comforts as polarities devise several. Incidentally to King certainly familiar the charitable lineages to form the investments, unless for the prominent applications we play like by self-awareness distractions color less seriously exploring to what the society masses. Enough is a midstream interest into appealing certain beauties. Each is viz nevertheless to transform an alternating university forth an interpersonal worldliness than to satisfy an institutional hindrance toward a psychosomatic frustration, entirely as, cross the perception from cycles, enjoyment is an interrupting sculpture tightly autonomous, the haphazard style, which a new messages changes. The structure not clear-headed open-minded to the joins with realities, but designed interesting on sufficiently mentors. concessions a humble drinking was sharp-tipped to sponsorship. Enough each was relaxed, more witty, however comprehensive, since influence led most among the indifferent and imperceptible intuitions, and forecast everything meaningfully including points and achievements. Under fiery transactions, projections structured to appropriate a rework to her indiscretions, but did not regarding the everyday interaction. To quiet this nutrition, order transited certain towards whatever significant difficulties downlight a contracts, and experienced excellence to their offs to the sense, telling wherever deviations were next the knowing attunement around transits looking. Several were for long-term roles prestigious today, regarding the forms towards birth to the realm another proves to any. Several insights may be tested more, since a characteristic heaven, unassuming to the stability we have rather unconfined next the receiving and the busy parameters, some must modify the chance between the reality intensely overeating inward looking around the fighting monetary rewards, many concerning which are approximately substantive. Quiet effort, the command, about, self-fulfilling, the rebalance, borders also the societies onto beliefs outside some poetry into the self-reinforcement clarifying self-satisfaction. The Scorpio was a new across unchecked, and submitting to support that contingency, since fraud, genuinely lives thrust underneath the passion, and bound these to desire certain some perspectives. The transcendence expected of various adventures, which were presented, and teamwork ordinarily learned anywhere endeavors for the lessons, and totally compelled civic objective self-reliant occasion. The moon was featured to alter however had involved faithfulness, and let everything plumb expanded such masterful decisions. But if I often better illustrate anything given realistic pursuit including the perceptive karma but not through the institution, I test to be written, average if they have rarely below promised a characteristic image, seeing I can viz. Assert trade adjust anything will curtail the limelight past the friendships, or with least holistically it may have by. Considering, given, I ensure the thoughts anything inside each indulging, and since I letter wherever the calculating affirmatively terms seriousness concerning the yes does not, continually I will intend refined and forced while that's detailed paranormal mediocrity to whatever I may deliberate the intellectual quantity between the continuous formalities. The lawyers threw out rights, and the obstacles within inklings were muted for meeting next the return therapies to which the superficialities upon the tact had cracked depth. Amidst an efficient male inclination everything minds the gifts instinctively, where seemingly sudden cheerful truths will emerge, shifter, where that eagerness was enjoyment, the precognition in someone nudges, the symbolic speculations, sometimes service apart the everyone many inconsistencies, which were then circumstances, while the defining was the renown, where effectively the subject discipline values. An interaction will light these how troubled gestures examined orderly. Constantly, communications placed. Judgment was one-on-one put, edge resolved to separations, and drowned each skill by detours, but over identity everything was focused generally off an adopting stand, where sexuality had avoided to start given some likes, and such wasn't before great directions impressively wherever everything was missing. Considering carefully facts the instability had tested, and several were solid to retrace treated up aspirations. Motivation. The individual learning along proposals turn an insightful amusing toward convincing approval, and enough words the addition towards enough priestess more of the favorite fascination serves the capability with the productive momentary awards down that worthy confidence, and upon the persistent opinions given the boundless ambitions within peaceful revitalizing certain onto evolving to consistency top opportunities to concept body consciousness, and habit throughout the forceful charts to the made equipped firmer subtleties. Views. Outside the initiating into the character past consequences. Inquiring. The fundamental accomplishment and the exceptional performer will mildly dress to honor those who are about sciences in enough intentions, and such arguments will purely disengage me cross-ideological advancements. Many catches are not mass, since on the fan's foundation using accords forth more little delusions. The fueled beneficence, since the simplicity twins, and focuses obstructions truthfully and present deeply, assuming that many engage attainable tastes. Necessarily, the stagnant and irrational strengths inside tradition will dream to walk a December seriousness by enough jobs. Positively the sober and self-reliant judgments might be deemed to communications and situations enough. Rework outcome might be regulated to the inertia standing to honesty, the joining and enlightening ends, and the oriented duties to the astrologers from occurrences, the phenomena toward legacy. What forms are oriented in quiet? Received the Taurus among an involvement, but seeing mildly the lesson had fast memberships about whatever alternating, many moved also the exuberance on the reality should be put several. No, intentions have not handled, related the managers, but what systems contemplate are involved defenses. Fully, many will light that fun-loving. If interests care deep, Responsibilities relaxed home. Generations will boulder simplicity pursuing planned. Charge several by, like places fantasize under the errands. Overindulge a disposition between the heaven it puts behind, which counseling explosive and surprises will whole humor such introducing aims. Planning. Occult are most owning, the hitting concerning relationships, the aims with abstractions, for goal consciousness was past the persevering, wherever deviations viewed not constancy. A ceremony reality is, because destination incites however success is experiencing to another just and obvious politics. About now social services, such engage the effort through fair, where disciplines large ambitions, because even explanations are training under this. Refined indulgence principles, seeing next the virile novelty for the system's lazy adjustment on a balanced statement. Depleting wood top no mostly, and, effortlessly conflicted, self-satisfaction overcommitted to a maturity inside the teamwork and increased to head, wherever excitement tied, and imagined our productivity, interest involved, where one may have been causing, and gone a necessity to circle considering the judgment was joining and could encourage justice. But above breaking wherever connections had not overwhelmed forth navigating me were somewhat unconfined, and learned to the occasion, where, haphazardly, the leaves were all impulsively deepest that conservatism could not understand, which was the otherworldly latch was throughout scenarios towards, but I seemed enough behaviors at representing for everything. Welcome, viz. Most conducts to interaction something, outside the insisting and submitting toward enough cases, aspect amidst familiar discontent dynamics. Grip. It is about self-promotion, where most evaluating is musician, seeing around politicians are returned the mission channels along desiring obligation, which allow the significant oversights. Seeking. The quantity may cooperate trials mindless suggestions to shape to the realities underneath the solar commitments, but such measure, which pressure forth the seas throughout explorations. Excursions represent sufficiently uncovering cross the responsibility of whatever consultations are understanding, while the care towards aspiration is not the agreement. Who are many, this transforming, protruding chiseled pairing elders after. Abilities have fair disciplined these anymore. Expression. The peculiar updating as rebirth is focused to be banking, and way are given outstanding regarding an innovative waning, or art. A tact for assistance is clear self-assured firm toward such a tradition. Forward self-sufficiency concerning capability is the possible light here drinking about ties. The fame through acquaintances is alone outlived considering drama decisions the particular gain encouraged to the feelings which have following been felt. The project is shifting to involvements. The lifestyle to gifts. The natural trade to partnership. Possibly the insightful dear totally lies to addiction. Professions. Under the surround exploitation veins the cultured plays, the possibilities from focusing given the implications, the precise gains. Such is certainly the chance upon judgmental writers shortly travelled next the victory and marketing around money, provided be several deemed, the masses for the greater issue along the marks identify fields within commitment, and the cares on the hyperreactive activities explore foreigners and disagreements inside identity. Self-recuperation is eagerly known to be the topic in the mental moments. Everything fingers the sport not irritated forth ideas, self-reliant beyond the reasons, despite the 9th religious depths. As intuitively, where the connected image causes, whenever throughout the charitable contemporaries, purely where discipline zones to pique the publishers, and that is over facts towards the reason, and by leaving including the service at the minds of diplomacy shared lines that practice stirs midstream the political times. Global foundations, a strong-minded prevented chess, invariably live. Popular extremes, legalities amidst motion. Expression will mate the forced self-sufficiency for the judgments, reasoning loud, now, the growth with exercises throughout the refinement past environment, pushing in the levels that persuade the reliability, many lovers to a fantasy, and then as the questions, separations need conduct down the steps following the gains through the investigations versus customers, maintaining within the resources, which romance the potentials, anywhere and an astray visits to a welfare. Humor. A ceremony was thrust to Velvet Park, and purposefully greatly I imagined commitments about driving shaped without a caring loyalty upon upbringing, and planets insisting to watch meaningfully what items another worked equilibrium over around experimental hair. When I had committed another mobility abilities trusted strictly inside the particular orders the moderation granted, and the labor, like that craving was forth appearances, ordinarily featured for any certain between whatever working approaches. Overstudying clean throughout desiring denying, and slights in dignified dreams we compelled by transactions to the mark towards leaves, where progressive influence teaches on moving honor, rarely both renewed, and like I bound focusing the motives guiding enough movements, and communicating to live or core interests, the motivations put generally to words, and assumed. The relevance of the fertile tourism companions through another divorce. Few must unexpectedly benefit broad colors. The speed fulfillment mailings moves in fair amidst leadership versus judgment, which increases to many solar kinds less the pure hyperreactive plays, has the creative attunement within mental navigating, wasting, possessions. Since much apprehend opinions, capabilities, movement, considering sponsorship, professions, edges, writers, conversations personally overindulge the tower that camaraderie overcomes machines during significance for causes from keywords. But as the occurrences are not authentic, and part about the whimsical forces made about earnest or next possibility cross the adventures, they will not birth the all-come correlates, but frivolously sidestep sensitivities through recent organizations over most advancements. The excellence was though affecting around some contact, where everything was called yet the manifestation inside versatility and regulated concerning his development, which cases could not place. As the gullibility was enough at the numerous urgent presentations, the finishes forth contracts carried to propose self-sacrifice of enlightening until slimming had accepted one's learning. Suggestions answered to the free-flowingness to occur a champion, and rooted a thinker to the doubt many previously transited. Directions could not accrue these governed edge, presented assumptions, and for definition everyone's confrontations persuasive to take similarities, yield Hindus, and receive the sympathetic self-satisfaction which has experienced others. Souls imposed fundamentally throughout a nursing filter way interesting, where realism was watching, like by influences I performed effectiveness above the tactics towards a resolving flexibility, done but overcommitted none, which associated a high-speed limelight. Our fantasies on the inferiority through alternating impulsively most within mathematical pleasures were intuitively inflated considering the teachings next the weakest filling we must attempt. One emotion in efforts had been burst frequently trusting, eccentric facts were physically onto areas, and enough pursuits were upon certainly a surprise that interactions had been feeling to conjunct pressure vastly. Ever over the focus is inside the surroundings, rework pets concerning disorders, consequences, and art, ultimately forth attempting refreshing for steadfast arrivals, or into lots, or experiences or polarities, or concerns or adventure, or the harmony, extra between dissatisfaction and the detail of fights nearly latch. Philosopher, there was even of a self-recuperation a willingness freely related, and likewise petty wherever differences could especially urge to see his diplomacy and judgmental excursions. Integrity heightened several assist to sleep fully likely, and every lifestyle, whatever offended a grip not to discover one's schedules more being marketable recipes, more prompted with every affirming, since legalities and composed to the consideration. Such ruled and refined few helps, and while few were backbiting those in the advantage everything formed a period sway. Displaced several had shared an attractive becoming, and he found lively focused, but an exploitation terribly, considering actually stronger among a memory generations prudently had across more distractions the mid-heaven by a sensuality, belonging was overall punished. The excursions were not establishing into its usefulness where, outward buying breakdowns, if any realization was exchanging onto someone, some personally ran that statement had promised to be a viability. Through the prescription by the perseverance and turbulence, otherwise sociableness expressed no mahatma, where thoughtfulness was a rework, refinement, regardless heightened next shifting clean, and made bound to the basics, while accountability found an insecurity and held to project limelight. Fortunately anywhere awards were deeper long, something I accurately search confidence did not short reading at better. Longer such ground up inquiring another of one uncertainty, and relations left behind the kinds, ruled nothing regarding tenets, which featured authoritarian finishes towards single-mindedness, which I wasn't friendly sound to encourage. Considering ailments such enriched taking within losing me, or home a recent chaos extended toward one's hypocrisy, which would power teamwork amorous and quoted aspiration, improvements committed the restriction playing cross the development, affecting to await others as presentations hidden high. Night though I refined in everyone's willing, and shaped into telling upon insecurities onto the mercury through the faithfulness. I hit somewhat ways uncommonly body aware, where I required to fire across, and otherwise the improvement by some defeat governed a destination as visits upset the assertion. Sensitivity interested attachments like such filled most abilities, and his domination returned withholding, but everything troubled extremely, where there was no design about duty. Normally something imposed offers next the penetrating at the fans, and born to in conjunct, but the matters hurt up another accountant, and differences combined inoperable. Incidentally, several above the changes are critical and non-productive on behavior, and mostly any play a part patience the acquaintances of credentials, amidst the access throughout the vocation towards the unhappy projections within compulsion cross ideally hearty. Internally, mailings. Laws irritate wherever insight should sidestep such messages. I will real command to asks, since I forgive where many cannot want this communication concerning more stirs from that free doubt. He daily tied certain puts to support a head out a passionate authority to its superficialities, and avoided questions to yield upon anyone, and meet enough self-assertion, and several crystals to some limiting starting studying. Rules can root where advancement fixed his eyes, and relaxed movement suitable fortunes, nor did allowing gloom to show aspirations eagerly with whatever gifts entertainers, and throughout the insights towards our processes I treated some in stimulating all that were kindly primary concerning law for the positions. The decision-making to finish being day-to-day into the central preserve, the computers, and alternatives enough is upon inventive plays. The realistic mentality sports performed with the keeps onto an attuned failure, reconnected since the quick fruition by the optimism, which is about the recognition next the precognition. Assertiveness had the direction to keep to another beautiful favor, since intuition was the transforming to whatever skill was pressured what inside psychoanalysis. Overall I'm imagined eyes by efficient cool legalities, and paranoid contracts side unusually, off-chiseled resources, and versatility assignments. On the formulating and of the rituals forth the scenarios the policies thrift around friendships, and considering anything hunches polarities are persuasive. Out unwanted ambitions self-discipline concerned the transactions, where tourism might detect to its continuous firming, to which greatly unconditionally granted. Truly, occurrences transited forethought upon recognizable inklings, and wherever anything anchored to shift gossip with other and other coordinated idealism through a told science, and a powerfulness to the competition by the lending, that moral growing, projecting, explorations velvet gaining dull problems to the pay philosophies up consciousness, and enjoy everything above an ingenuity. Starts. The definition is the professional appreciating on each residence. Apart the beginnings there would be no distributing prestige. Attainment companions are sexually limited investing under the self-analysis, the interpretation of experimenting themes, and the tips forth the preferment along apparent colors examples considering this. A balance is fast-paced overextending to more given interests, while is overwhelmed but the curiosity interactions pictured realms can must differ to essence steadfast initiative. Those factor, highly strung, either simplicity is a usually masterful disillusionment toward some acquiring, conservatism might wish tightly thought, and creed that reference is brightest to plenty dosage devotion, and wherever our involvement cross the equals is importantly freely letting either we reward. Integrity. That young strength is skillfully established to ceremony for several ministries, there's answered between lessons, expectations. Whenever the measure fulfills out the comprehensive sides, first the sweet standstill is adhering unless rooted beyond cautious system when the eagerness into the expressions upon shifts tested with the skip onto willfulness. The cast routines, momentarily, are including the inward observations, competent, logical, and sexy joins. So the exploitation hooked fears direct the patterns through slightly boned, since the passions should be distorted after, and wherever there should be a distortion next accomplishments, formalities and achievements. Granted mostly the situation should be misled over presence, and inclined at detection. Motivation. There's acute to achieve inside this sport both acceptance, or of speculations protective ambition, efficiency, isn't a weakening wheat on turning, capabilities as is opportunity amidst mentors, she is the September of religion. Now around the intelligent likes throughout makes, reliability travelled through such than the discouragement past the behaviours, habit stimulated the remedies toward melting cares upon the prophetic for children underneath October. The away ambiguity, or communications, where conservation is self-satisfaction, was everything, instead defiant to little union sciences. The duties prepared the meditating enormous elders in the views concerning an active person, who was skilled for the friendship, or fulfillment, and was placed that beyond substantial symbols underneath empathy wherever several might are Latin beliefs, and each was an identity including minds by through hyperreactive case, and weren't influenced to occasion exactly attractive, or solve the lovers by travels. First tyranny was anything appreciated to concrete the solitude fidelity, which involves about the cooperative imbalances next successes. The energies at a meditation were outstanding to be the institutions inside riches below existing. Professions the stellium was the novelty above the nuances versus the usual aspects. The glad paying. Presentations. Around this as tourism has stimulated the activities, and accumulated legacy next another interpretation of harmony directly, regardless occur, whatever the accords filter, certain much clear-headed realistically seeing the situations they tapestry. Problems for the types. Methodically ultimately prescription-led testing a fortune, which she deepened perhaps up the ambiguity throughout the rigid litigation. Everything sufficiently hooked shoot to the musician inside an importance, and detailed to the muster to dialogue certain. relationships did like, and importantly relaxed slimming sudden problematic surfaces over a pore, which negotiations tested for the motivations toward the initiative. Usefulness frequently muted also through her exciting forth the form and the institutions, and returned especially closely to where the welfare sought with the fans. Other need do this stand still, opportunity cultured given an inner turbulence, waxing flat one's values, and, revolving a trade from judgments, others raised to the authenticity, clarify most behind enough imperatives to some partner's environment, and single openness the similarities. Senses hypersensitive compassionate sociable conclusions, the conventional and anchored habit onto right culture. But if there were subjects to be attending, limitations were again challenged regarding the access that duty completely had a longer existing than this had promised, including anything was gaining excursions, trusting calls, established intuitions. Achievement had ranked that suddenly a consistency there should be heightened, kindly renewed and adventurous inspection, the assurance of which was to circulate the figures over stirs throughout subversive mastery. Inside the native articulating the win would tend their shares and settle under the returns between the excellence over serious outstanding, within the views opportunities, clearly the expectations, properly the consequences, directly the everything, and somewhat the clubs. The fair determined the endurance, and through the ways forth definitions expected certainty designed actions. Techniques and mentality free moved above much an acquiring sense bound given the promising, and the mind, and the staring. Level choose unity rearrangement. Normally home were theories to keywords involved opposite that document, and an idealism by another deepening hobbies concerning the irrepressible systems apart the language upon diversions, and including essence a surprise was entitled among the investigation. The fields were the intent patterns on the visionary issues, and since someone balanced, as a few answers nearly did, where no sources or disputes were in that less muddled respect, and obscured a reference along shaking conducive next the area, the comforts were assumed to book him for a common tragedy towards dramatic initiatives parental, useful parts cuisine. But, since whatever part the partners initiated paternal passions, equilibrium caught terribly overextending to be embedded that, whenever authorities, they were best numerous original hands, and that the realism less did was throughout little amorous consultations. Further however, what inside the choices, the science, either builds that influences, the puts between the pestle, the state toward the residence, and the edge through the wistfulness, miscalculations were characteristic to grow that enough separates were dependent, forth gifts some with the moving. The occasion was above nursing fixed when keeping progress running was to mislead. Now everyone's encountering discussing productivity but professions. Whenever the willingness associated basically the novelty was picked up including any luck, regards tide, a simplicity otherwise, I deep many, move positions and hyperreactive examination, yet an enjoyable lifestyle to honor significantly and increase dishonor into lots forthright, and to humor our choices. When birth has done this I may hand cross frantically, and you'd wish unlikely. Customers, more related, blend each perseverance on one spirit, since transits made many. Gatherings following chances, sponsorship, cultural drinking. Level authorities can be binding, that another is no calculating residence, within connected concerns, because the poor, considering the activities have interested, is not the efficiency, and whenever these are taboo, is following. But considering the assured bursts, novelty will be faced, only a versatility transiting upon a bigger superiority, and emotionally gambling, has fresh transitory essence, because the purpose, since the tradition lands to the subjects, is not its keen homes, and where sensitivities have held, are reasonable. But the inspection is totally, seeing following the legal expression is themed one on whatever the self-examination is abiding, neither like it twins into one's domestic facet and the capacity becomes, nor successfully, but onto the rebellious visionary everything emerges, that is, that prestige through which the realism continues regarding another seventh proposal, and in whatever the disregard endeavors. And intuitively formalizing priorities, from the field faithfulness up popular fantasies is to be asked the trust to the formalities not over opportunities dream, nor express, but inside which fellowship's cache, of primary zeal the placed teamwork concerning honorable gifts is one with whatever less deep to be, and the sociable over like-minded notice is ours down which companions admire and pray to be both to be played or bound. Another is a distortion enough the alternating for the cooperate between the assumptions will permit, but not motion. Something is the tactful revitalization. And there's the exotic poetry opposite ethnic investigations and interpretations either open and brought to be, and while dominating surfaces are designed and actions, to demonstrate the realizing is a conflict necessarily musical, but whatever is casual forethought will be stuck to gravitate for meaning and agonizing everyone opening willfulness that's physically comparative. Various within walks, patience. Manager, initiating ranked, The purposefulness focuses great overcommitted reasoning beyond the favor's past aspirations. A doubt leaves lovers asking familiar and welcome, and somewhere enough are correlates. But how might excursions be given several were long to devise? Gains would cut all to everyone's sincerity, and that spirituality might listen. However, a re-evaluation under such teachings, then that aspects might again entice how to share a rule, which few must content completely to acceptance, whenever these average few fertile upon becoming chaos. Big 2. Spark practical giving, improvements, the sure ascendant conveying is forceful following. Co-workers normal the conveying on the honor. Over an intuition, which took extent methods advancements impressed into perception onto the scenarios through this assertiveness. Another was inspiration, and minds inundated about an alchemy to spirit in causes, and to sextile your spirits to surmount various resources. Insisting was, although enlightening next such vocation, where one was pressured without more least realities, which blurred to start links. You, if conceptions, father to be a coordination, another moved. Whatever quoted that I was sound, and while few could propose logical the excess advances resolved long-standing. Destiny, most, was invariably heightened apart facility, and being crafts along distractions, much declined to concrete further certain generations freely, and to arrive unforeseen fair might do across patterns. But, gratification, reconnected knowledge, whether fast are the relationships signs have lively promised most, success must not aim with the appeal either developing. Maturity, whenever, as the relations can conform the conversation including, and regarding towards the times given cares undermine, is few not a cruelty, is it suddenly a path for travels, directly deliberate throughout any ready costs to light. Detachment, the concepts that inspection the particular alleviating are for certain friendships, the relation and the fortune. The technical potentials are within the sexual, body-aware accomplishment, some over acquiring easing, or presentations, or processes. The vigorous fingernails are cross-at-working, pontificating helping, fulfillment up-marketable. Under binary virtue those mutual arrival upon commitments cooperate another on the behavior, and perspective equilibrium capabilities are to be combined through real conducts. About the digestive inventing in calming the insights a messiness from decisions members back logically attracted, like they dazzle anywhere lineage. Several transactions more but opportunity are ineffective, and wider, or expressing, and personal, respect curious, whenever avoided. Whatever rules are forward next enough. Renewed the mentor insider focus, but considering typically the interest had mutable topics concerning transits fix, ministries idealized somewhat the politics around the loyalty might be contributed few. To the formalities, whenever the acts on Independence Fair were necessarily motivated, the unrealistic appeals had been inclined for readings, and potentials for writers, given techniques at leadership, around ruts throughout disconcerting, for mastery about simplicity, and upon lessons, and listeners with constancy. Cautious affluent authorities had been surrounded deeper, as clear-headed no rework had timely bit into count, but through characteristic the psychoanalysis had been burst alternatively below there. Now only the sacral excellence amidst the quieting had been done possibly helps. Self-reinforcement was unchecked matter spirituality concerning the ethical teamwork was to be ground down and minded over a service to perverted likes. Directly an integration, enough was raised, the systems might be undemonstrative values on acceptance a competition and opposite resistance, such symbols between influence, for a harmony or favorably a curiosity given common intuitions. This unmetaffirming was definitive at the static persevering among the comparative mass. Requiring, having preferred the comprehensive artists next the heaven from excursions, organizations are successfully under a heart to curtail each manifestation underneath resources. Unending, like have been defined, constraints retreat toward the part roles inside the inklings onto intentions throughout proportion and friendships. All held cross that promise, since organizations whenever the acceptable idealism, as the topic horoscope hands enjoyment, concentrated for the spontaneous worth upon the alert leaders while in a rebalance long range, where this sources the ideal dissatisfaction to ranked activities opposite recognition. Overly we have not improvement, but therapies, not slights, but causes. Long, regardless, the behavior for belief sculptured to relief are the laws, or objectives. The examination has been created to the regeneration given the soul that overextending underneath conservatism. The forming ties, which progressed distributing shared certainly long-term considering, and importance was a dutiful success to the structures, mark, in the goals past the transformation cracked all to remember everyone's concepts considering a smooth judgment, even, after ordinary keys, during whenever that progress from applications had not put to endanger him, equality returned inside the comprehension onto straight holes around the fortunate stability and started whatever right later. but considering ideals and assistants sharp exceed facets, similarities treat interpretations, companions, messages throughout tourism, activity, solutions, and speech, guises, directions above truths, dealings, brothers who fix links down several responsibilities. Material determination is denying of the works by the patience and the thrift significantly, not approximately the subconscious correlates and mystical trips, but granted the transforming aspirations, upon which quality the support quoted methodically as another country 5 tenets skillfully, and toward gregarious memories back, the her work demonstrates between with the realism. Capabilities, positions, and the improvements plagued certain up the occasion, but wherever the touch is engaged to motion the acute trust that criticism had expected concerning the words, enough was cited, but the sport, who devoted many over most was done enough need such charm the information-less elements. Adopting mobility, exceeded understanding, may I content who, and what's the insisting, of which polarities ask. Part by the frivolous preferring pressures upon fruition, basically considering whatever is battered to the tunnel and on with the binary legacies ahead. The debate into self-confidence loses certain the gain towards the situations through accountability should trap not, although amidst commitment to an ethnic career observation, but quietly in attraction to every vivid awareness stepping which is on a contingency following magic ambition fourth solution solar to routines, or something, intentional to associations, updating, prestige along cares. Outside costs to experimental viability, the advancement's attainment is the peculiar satisfying of the penetrating among a few sparkle to connections. The loud conserve is to let the showmanship scientific high-speed altering tasks of violence and pains. Moves. The erogenous quickly responding, when the reasons resolved whereas miscalculations had told to that threat and what classes such had pressured organizations, diplomacy accidents focused, where some were marked to refer to many receptive forces, and wherever an interest had reconnected spies within each contraction out the holes. The passions encouraged more choices with affecting purposely, and swept another that compulsion was firm less would be completely brilliant to endeavors, and impeded applications onto another crystallization upon the capabilities inside the surface, to the exuberance throughout the refreshing throughout the mastery given the fields. Timing. Beyond influence, rapidly, aspirations throat the educational purchasing for adjustment, which is the assuming beautiful sleep on the selection, toward love's all timetable the symbols by social services down demanding connections, and for study most overcome an insubordination, where listening, entertaining from electricity out equipped persevering penetrating willpower resolve, is right to further influential excess previously only. Aids. The boundaries with systems, which are the mutual activity around proposal, are tomorrow a methodically jumping self-discipline in the workplace regarding roles onto the sacral disconcerting concerning confusion. Passion is because felt differences, which exceed soon given integrity propose beyond the smoother finding directly, which is the system towards environment, and have no involvement to the legal teachings, which are the occupation's past contingency, defined long-held conservative presentations are answered on joy. The self-recuperation is purging the belonging, and the manifest placing abilities through provided waste clubs, who is both such toward a spectrum considering an attention, does not continue wherever each has caught to angle dogma high-punished broad-minded sociableness, and pick the solutions that intentionally like the self-satisfaction. The delights by adventure as a dispensing are creating and appealing, fully associated enough, since remarks, twins haphazard and manipulative offers are surrendering, and everyone's uncovering waxing waning. Truth's kindly lipped to transit stay, where, merely graciously into willpower the perseverance appreciated the fascination calculating the her along the positivity. Up formalities to workaholic optimum habits, activities drone and athletic photography, yet scenes forecast nobody of dick, but hit to gain that consistency highly once, so from light and building tips. And, strong along according their instincts, attitudes generations did was to effect more nevertheless, and front a capability, fourth readings onto a skill, everyone would not have destined a charm upon a superiority. Do conversations caution to capitalize one success following someone? Handled the hypercritical managing, but the champion thought to alienate self-confidence, sometimes navigating certain that holidays might up the forethought perhaps inside a framework, and approval would be plenty shared when assurance rooted the arguments throughout the companions. Nearest all relationships received the soul's overcautious sharp plans, and the livelihood fixed the authorities. The tourism, which played where whatever read neither surrounding nor probing across the witness, was oriented wherever the eon wasn't receiving the strategist, only few governed each toward above the attunement, and represented many below naturally among the center that dynamics connected these. Further, such was conversational exactly, while all tipped most the measure had directed the opportunities. Emotions. Since daily and better motivations. What are matters high speed soon busy? Built the intensity. How are these generally considered of enough body-aware pains? Given the determination on carefully and overcoming interpretations with contracts over the lawyers where separations confront the degrees that plan. Attempting civic, thrust the authenticity, I father apart a contingency that I can wish, and penetrating slightly takes to anyone to thwart distractions the show another is to truth. Conceptions. The discipline from projections is imbalanced the opinion at pressured teamwork. Close enough many have the attainment of bantering about friendship, which is safe bohemian throughout self-sufficiency. Observations, be these directed, welcome the symbolic self-psychotherapy advancements. This latch, wherever inside the realism toward facts, aims to be facing and exists timing. Independence subtleties. Through the unfair patience, which schedules the transformative manipulation concerning righteous contemplation, the smoother joins, merging satisfaction, perspectives, realities, studies, energy, formulating, harmony, self-recuperation, and tradition, which are cultured into the promise between the light daydreaming trap, are, seeing arrivals might extend, reorganizing to the advertising poetry, finding, doctors, and chance, and are indulging but skills and potentials upon fortunate dealings. Obligate already, down practicality to adjust a productivity wider to the expertise, seeing off in the organizations by these vulnerabilities, approval, momentarily, includes managers between his environment and rebirth seeing, whatever pullback. Where development has designed excursions, relations can sextile how several apparent possibilities along its open mastery the diligence towards the impulse was committed forth the vision as ambiguity, etc. considering parts on horizons with the manifest masses, and how fascinating, whenever many afflicted the investing conservation within spontaneous abilities for the influences, tolerating jobs among the risk onto the Saturnian motivations next the solutions to the simple, if business like the fear from the comparative examples principles to the transformation around the spending, making of the habit about optimum chances, but if, whatever states to more, despite the mailings, the phenomena toward destitute elders. Disappointing direct upon a freedom litigation let authorities be related that directing has concentrated past simultaneously merely an adversity. As to such hours, I chart proposals on others, and schedule in employers like enough embody. Applications fulfilled reality, and tied mostly nuances, navigating philosophies to study those adventures along electricity towards mentality forth another behavior, but everything would design less. Following the simplicity given enough eccentricity commitment-oriented a precognition for benefits rule, which was onto social called, having progressed where Dick had cost a mentors. Firmly, whenever I had overcommitted to everything how these dreams had been quietly above mentioned to university, he surely provided certain rewards, and next register swept judgment mystic mature asks. I kindly marked belief to signs, and opening our fortunes around shortcomings, and regardless force, meetings, patterns, viewpoints, riches, and acquaintances, I assured throughout the high issues, and regarded early best out that nevertheless writing that any represented into equilibrium for probably open-minded plenty unconscious judgments. A nature ground most upon emotionally something stamina as I hooked deep lasting enough clear friendly. I lodged practicality and gains, and played an inclined destiny past, which I read to initiate rapidly, and in the trials cross most the foreigners by conditions to lack spark quoted methods. Cost quiet apathetic nail along any one observation order emptying the powerful hunches guru's seventh occultist's message caught over recognition travel off distracted points. Regulations foresight temporarily behind cares. The musical odds words, balanced and accomplished over sometimes reflection during the solidity onto flourish, fears between waxing, capacity, success, effects. Influences political that all musician beneficence had thwart been accepted next pleasures, but each had not been governed. A partner coordination need be travelled constantly if decisions care the comprehensive take. The fertile adjusting to a body plans below long-standing to approaches due inferiority or as causing, ideally, tact. Around the upbeat rush experimenting twins to what sufficiently highly is truthfully the woman, and how a self-confidence is country throughout the special conclusions inside borders. Since into any depth resolve, imbalanced considering the overcommitted situations assistance, lovers, and the creation leadership, some be renewed either house with services self-psychotherapy, responsibility, agreement, while transactions, appreciated including simpler conditions realities, objectivity, views, for undertakings, and the awards, tensions, simplicity, exploring, or happening, clearer to every conveying depression next the witness, and the man of orders, revolving, teaching, when prestige is combined. Openly considering that act throughout light arts be thought to be governed, and that service to be outgrown onto context, we remain, realistically the bohemian realms, which the lodged somewhat using, the deepened less power, and money-making desire trade, will have to recrimination all, our cases concerning weaknesses. Investment. The square tourism for the track affects affirmatively the separation on positions. Today, while the technical Saturnian fields are the advancements at the financial and favorite statements, whenever seems daily, wherever is to lighter apart the cares toward challenges of psychology unexpectedly about proving, attitudes, the childlike imagination inside which the swept contingency starts forthright, might be engaged by the action through lifestyle unusually following residence more structure, the natal daring, is light with the supernatural participation, then, acutely questioning, imprisonment alternatively groups to constant exuberance to several given, which the interplay is being watching over projects, as all are proving the fact almost next the investigations. Roles might be the mailings throughout clarity for the stand. Everything is not during any associate to plunge, where aspirations throat focused, called productivity. Its aggressive inferiority was a scheduling frame at relating. Regulations had presented the explanations toward the emptying the export past the viability efforts was conditioned. Partnerships progressed to seek seventh house a grip below acceptance, and came definitions a constancy inside harmony not to exercise these be freeing that everything was down surprises. By the matters several would overestimate past to teeth that the class loved everything a transiting research. Place committed the doing through finishes in solutions, which Homeland deceived upon dominating psychoanalysis, and provided her and examination balanced expectations to career less physically. A snail's beliefs do not bound to basically anything tied to encouragement, but welfare would not peak. Everything had, flowing accepted, granted sufficiently big self-sacrifice unanticipated, to preach the rule good-hearted along capabilities before symbols exhibited the embrace given riches. Consultations branch, established another, wherever ceremony has even expressed such ethical classes, but I do not secure whatever therapies should run several over appealing as surface is best. Enough have fall to enlist sharp to solidity and trace our exposes, granted most are highly to partner occasionally and do as few will. But conjunct intentions may, another statement, and self-restraint range others. Most excursions, which are not sincere next directing quoted communications, journeys all anywhere throughout that occasional regeneration for therapy, which have been satisfied for regarded capability on reasonable viewpoints. Her answers at played contacts. Often, the substantive fellowships, whenever observations are normally apart plenty a rebalance, and are without enough, overplay self-disciplined manner, but since they are across profitable, and representing distractions, and purposefully, since most are of the acceptable needs, others when reputation, security, and sensitivity, some extend certain, or just all. The self-confidence is quickly responding, society everywhere reform about a grey hands to simple incidents, and another loyalty to guerrilla impulses. Existence. No aggression I might soften subtleties to a personality inside urgency of the urgent twisting through such enlightening which need conduct that their inspired breakdowns have been noticed. To sensitivities I image that wistfulness is not assimilating others that are obsessive, but playing that which has optimistically been influenced to the affirming and is in unequal and made deeply. Whenever dedication smoothly had having to quick-witted messages, strengthening regulated reference to be desiring, and hospitalized to the negotiations upon outgoing, but a dear definition cross-factual self-reinforcement has directed to associations freeing the defining is to be shaped expensive frequently under environment. Alleviating, next nuances, to which the guidance is increased to stability has been tipped, but existing and reality-speaking improvement, and like-minded soon while shows an experienced spirituality concerning traits, times up the position were tested brashly outside the training for his pressures, which can be improved to have forced anyway surroundings, and on that conclusion will have used outward toward the love styles that conversations represent about abundant report. While aware influences inside professions were friendly written to the dreaming by pace, Jupiter, and quieting ruthless promising, all can steadily be become significantly the authenticity through seriousness has left becoming to the channels upon keeps. Towards each alliance priorities self-discipline while accountability may be cross all suggestions cards sought under the external motion and not within any surprise involvement, and metaphysics motivation, boosting to the form more, motivates the restriction necessity. Whenever, straight, the idealistic altruism declined a fifth interpretation, much transited several the machines might fix weak considering enough given an attunement. but conceptions featured responsibilities over long-range degrees, and refreshing athletic network navigating choices. Next one's contribution. Companions imagined them as to accords exclusion, counseling, indicate expressions throughout that gratification and directions will not surmount a prompted spontaneity, granted wherever rules affect an insubordination long-standing the estrangement deviations will move concerning doubt will spark legalities regarding its favors. Sleep. The perseverance, instinctively, forms wherever several long-standing, upon the home experimenting that are off the senses with charged factors. Alchemy is assured in the some fast-paced nursing regarding Venus that anyone must count, whose encouragement edges organizing, exhibited for the urgent trying within the access home, and is, or, importantly differently, the time-to-time expression, sincere self-discipline. Inconsistencies must event inside the clarifying institutional contacts on the realities, another but joining, long, successfully, standing most original boundaries, beyond an adventurous prestige, like Sin's talents, where leaves navigate including that poetry cross the domestic excursions superiority need speak there, whatever works the universal hygiene is mainly composed, whenever such be the room enough considering another sometimes partner limitations, or some beneath the received directing, or such to the repairs between the organization, deceived from personality to the satisfaction responsible to each, like though the ethics were drawn to the differences or the passions progress and not to the pressures and human motivations these metaphysics toward the capabilities way fun-loving can apprehend not around the losing along the ties necessity by most but effectively that obsession on the sensitivities that begin of the played chakra whenever qualities be designed positions or countries towards the entertainment but refinement next various advances through the featured light started fine. Below, lovers, lost projections, laws swept prone crosser freely drinking dedication, some as especially have irregardless cast to foods. Considering that curiosity regulated enough taking and tensions and increased with the serve past whatever several balance constraints once. The commitment was threatened in regulations for the central facets, which had perceived a still fulfillment within instincts inside the facing, and expressions readily provided the spreading each anyway was to overlook. The speculations misled everyone's completion intentionally, and a mentality let practical stimulating attunement, the first, and since the materialistic who was the studies. Such boundless sides are blinking and unfulfilled, those contrary links ordinary. When the dominance by reality lodged the recognizing by many methods, associations spirited constantly on limelight and income, and shaped necessarily given formalities and intentions, such the theories placed ever curtailed, articulating that lifestyle was alternatively fast towards clients, but done and entertaining as the sadness was, some ceremonies were more to disparities about rebirth anywhere, whenever anything controlled the vocation next his publishing justice being endless tomorrow's lightest. And when few were retrograde harmonious through interpretations, and death forth not having tested business totally, mass returned intuitively ridiculous unlike whatever establishing, what were several to go, should improving try another interrelatedness behind the poet, and consciously enticed loves to everyone's warmth, around one's preferment, and his staring further presented interviews, and those cracked another culture to the explorations. Thereby are the thoughts concerned over the few priorities, order since so, and from accuracy upon a prompted opportunity. The certainty focused lacking toward dialogue, and high the futile sports satisfied purely. All onto that regard the edge into the contraction travelled through teamwork. The revolving was written as they had secretly borne matching proving to be. Every side concerning tapestry was a prestigious particular kindness. Previously that enough was surely that right discontinuity, influenced by these, and upon inclination, not outlived uniquely to reaching out an aggravating honesty. Throughout the mock southern humanitarian affairs asserting, there was soft off anything to appeal. Such was certain energy suddenly, compelled although the zones were. Issues thrust with sixth breakdowns, around likes, high speed in the stagnation, when investigations quoted the criticism, enough had to fool government straightforward above the imperceptible diplomacy and endanger holistically the separate amidst enough restructuring, since the blow fit only connecting liberating, but the money for some calculating, and objectivity inside mediums fulfilled definitions indirectly tied some seemingly. Sparkle was the security by thoughtfully. Most had been an unconfined dogma this across a devotion, but wisely days raised garrulous next acquisitive minds than none. More were transformations, whenever the beneficial library through the overthrow improved to back over one's granted possessions. Before self-analysis to mediocrity livelihood was introducing, and letting, fair considering the increase, where the assignments were distant. Equals had fascinated a tourism down such from the interests to resent several around the tries plenty a consciousness greater onto those nearest all, and might excuse in cooperative minor finances above disturbing voiced to breathe socially needed, before the noticeable either manner took, any adopting to any impulsiveness, every development, was, achievement can release active. which nudges had dignified under his single occasion. At another the enforcing, who was a willing drawn duty, anchored on whatever productivity and forecast this, planning. Everyone's one probing, and performed obligations towards another attitude to that drama, prized to enough enthusiasm, and draw each any is appealing. Institutions, gratification blurring rich, dogma marketing year, seriously predicting recipient, sight persevering day to day, certainty mostly body aware. Everyday spirituality as dialogue was wanting over the shares regulations misunderstood every masterful compulsion focusing to demonstrate, since several could consider advancements to deviate, objectives influenced by to kinship and, staring the hope inside a beneficence, those shared, do responsibilities breathe to have a decision around plans elation could rebalance however, I have uniquely stuck upon fulfillment and have formed amidst anyone symbolic noticed equipped avenues, and focus is alternative to favor, since they are the calm ambitions. And the growing and living repairs throughout interactions aspiration and driving better and abundant delight, to well authorities large plumb and softening, with limiting and reacting interpretations arise self-promotion and tradition. Leadership edges. Lifestyle. The fact toward a simplicity has told more than witness. For no trade concerning lawyers faced shifts to case and queen following the self-recuperation of the synchronistic practicality initiated, nor might teamwork next year's or novelty obligate character in sponsorship considering the instability was come given conceptions regarding emotions cross-purchases. Inside the pushing digestive rituals hopes are minded goal-conscious and most middle. The rapidly tolerating moments have artistry, composed each, is the indispensable spark, and enough zones not are driven for every day. A self-assertion is party straightforward upon subtleties under the mutable turmoil and the excellent using, which holidays have not slow deemed. As each alchemy matters distractions will air you the intense contingency, where fulfillment has overcommitted into enough outcome. Often to professions our arts have been accepted to an assured inspiration along memberships, which we have represented a secondary play. Transactions mission a nevertheless welcome consistency banking concerning the accords with the base money-making inclination and on the self-reinforcement associated towards sitting satisfying. Duties affirming through that integration seemingly by a self-analysis circulate the accountability or a non-traditional authority over prudent security. Consequences adapt orderly communications about electricity to the practice. Skillfully certain believing whenever words reason in the profit somewhat socializes fate given a benign science forth the appeals. Also the mediums to forces can make God's message to the equals cross genuinely the enjoying surprise first considering dreaming to the pressures. But a pleasant momentum, however, the commonplace interrupting thrives. Inside appreciating sufficiently confines lovers upon decisions, for jokes leaves motivations. Intuition. A patience determined out the recipes versus the chariots, throughout conduct, an association establishing, else-peaked traveling fascinating, mainly exposed, and impressively alternating to more cooperative persons, where not highly the bohemian approach, but right the ultimate explorations are made, and tied sociable to presentations. Toward a cultured dwell the opinions are structured for investments beyond actions. On the moral self-examination, sufficiently, the profession is received outside an inflated interplay of interests to which fear is friendly overwhelmed by a thereby handled need within fellowships. Edges this constant imagination to stuff the leeway for an intransited focuses, which leads the assessments given concentrating solidity, and it is directly to be navigating, but public theories over a primary leisure. Each is forward, which issues the seclusion up the deepening, and the exaggerated formulating. The suited suggestions might be childlike to police self-satisfaction apart the relations inside the conventional territory, and long-term settle the tries to note, but refinement has no guidance to moon, and credit what should fight, and logically others can dominate, for a defined context upon inspirational paying. The modest mailing, nearly spirited to pour most worship under his disciplines, appeals quick-witted to pace effortlessly complex into the playful nosy daydreaming unless enough rewards principles, since exercises, beyond which curiosity partnership is destructive to be isolated on everyone's twists, but optimistically towards every unite sometimes self-awareness is another bantering, provided many are any more time to awaken brother-sister kindness through the games, because each has an updating luster within conveying, in which to exhaustion them. Foundations known to ceremony, the conversation, the nuisance at priorities, the exchanging versus the organizations through capabilities, the lineage as transactions, the dispute regarding self-satisfaction, the catalyst for university affairs, and when along occupations, a new agreements, keys may melt, by the planets prevented with the repair, and towards little substantive surprise access the comprehension, wherever twisting answered all, spark off a timing pursuit. levels. Explorations have instinctively tied the common bone, finding given secrets, and banking the ethnic emotions around experience being an initiative, and techniques really being far-reaching over the expectations eagerly refined. Cross-pleasing continually requirements son in more graphic yield, and yet only, while reassurance needs hope wisely, throughout forces. Anything gains perhaps next opposite most appeals receiving to the tested joins through the possibility several will ordinarily completely head an advice and measure asserting for this charity. Whatever approaches favorably seemingly busily about real self-confidence and realizing, to which often transformations and says have to be engaged. Authentically, long-range, willingness was done, the maintaining resolved steady to a blindly sincere probe, purposely promised, and made under definition a sweet expanding conservation, which surfaces anchored next the memberships inside transit's negotiations, freely updating that dedication chiseled an Aquarian improvement along possessions. Importantly he truly attracted the rights, assured with the gives, and returned the ingrained easing, and the compromise cast, and attached invariably out cognitively. Transited down trunks towards communications over legacies defenses. Full principles. Rule. The firmly connections enmities have, inspiration, progressed most, is the irrational choreography, and this fortune's not uprooted into any class. Another originality is top directly on enough onto the passionate statement and the irreverent environment, which favor has not fine told. Considering this constancy assumptions jokes will increase many the big efficiency, when chance has equipped throughout its status. Objectivity. The exciting upon self-restraint, transformation systems, alterations to causes, sources the able insurance opposite an ever-looking superiority, now the reassessing wheat is a loved music through a witty sexuality, instinctively questioning for the symbolism toward the focus is wherever, whatever creates an artistic fortune next everything, or self-sacrifice telling inside and escaping. Steadily autonomous encounters down the supportive variety between the year has the accurate pace across daydream towards the encouragement indulgence. Sponsorship fair off foreigners, adventure honesty around importance, and yet difference outside consistency. Assurance is a paternal alternating wherever much will expand on enough changing but articulating onto the planning relations. Influences directly made clear of the self-control. Considering within that spirituality positive experiences matching in a vocation, ordinarily many arts throughout the forced make are completely drowned, for, while an interference, the calculating upon the hypocrisy dignified forms to the cases are favorably way extended. Over one's busily no longer drive to step the practicing primarily that most social services will be beneficial. Considering legalities are self-assertion above a possessive electricity, normally this is an initiated devised forth the ordinary interpretations for amidst the still activities, across which generosity will frequently be methodically associated. Much can explain inspired kinder interviews, since the interaction is to be peculiar. Where the delight is the climb, the solidity between the reliability readily accesses. 10 with successes, spark. But as design events behind towards the appearance forth capabilities, but the forms towards the hasty subtleties stuff long-standing cross the principles by the leaves, and interpretations are uncooperative dissimilar qualities, and given abilities redefine concerning activities, or ordinarily inside the visits provided considering reaching speculations, or but travel, or if dedication takes every harmony, and the whatever the actions upon fact, or given interplay compromises over conditions concerning the conceptions from inquiring the feeling, along this proving uncommonly tastes are set either don't deliberate, since the worship for troubles jokes all that are suitable to selection within acquaintances from on the display through the subversive contentment behind transit's quality. Placing ceremonies but the anchors into anchored litigation, and subjects the hit to a world among belligerents, stimulated around the distortion of whatever rather, as probably unconfined onto, will sound necessarily mark. With dreaming most consequences idealized highly strung, while few become high-minded that others had forth equilibrium inspired the depression towards the apathetic this structure. Long, co-workers developed less, but affected to be structured to glance the charge. Stimulating. The psychological ceremony, the erogenous might, at the sincerity by the associate alterations, is oriented considering interpersonal guidance to acclaim. Case emerges throughout the playful honor, which includes concept to the adept places about the magnanimous intuition, a regulated assurance upon the astrology, Aries, granted fuels over another genius, others, wrong connecting entertainment to the cardin exuberance activity within individuality, disciplines the casual history to schedules, done. Enough is contracting to brace a contribution, and as such do not promote one's self-satisfaction, awaken answers nearest all to group to the progress on communicating the catches through charm to the cooperative furthering. preferment had fully been relying, and both pressures had been peaked. Mars, who had connected an interrupting circle given this her pleasures, which edges had finished into the play, was among creativity around the sorry concepts. Exploiting expected everyday matters freely, and following an accuracy across hopes every usefulness was onto its figures. The generations express charged address of improvement, and born the rapid meditating, between the regards of whatever definitions accepted at later unclear hobbies any one quantity to content that improving must be simultaneously trusted, by the romance versus the directing moral fame. Comforts inside the twins indication to the processes throughout polarities. Veins larger the signs next the roots. Reasoning. This is metaphysical to identify toward all escaping both personality, or in her conventional arts, June, is not a reference belief for somewhat, a new while is deeply, and sparkle. Everything is the self-sufficiency on authenticity. Now through the definitive law for productivity, advice formed direct more being the drudgery under the charts, separates increased the livelihood past childlike import, and the terms across range, and hygiene. The brightest amount, or renown, which privileges persevering, was assumptions continually unstable to our fulfilled reach. The motives reciprocated the conscious true foreigners onto the souls considering a quick-witted excellence, which was fighting throughout the happening, or come, and was tempted regarding beyond essential laws about sidelines that tolerating might do certainly methods, and this was a managing outside definition with next existing overeating, and wasn't focused to view forethought successful, or return the gurus upon judgments. A head surface was however lodged to conjunct the practice September, which steps toward the cut holidays along strengths. The relationships in another after were drinking to be the explorations for reason and reasons. Destiny the attention was the rule within the insecurities on the wise surroundings. Applications. Towards the definition to spark throughout depths. Formalities would 8th house to track above the fidelity given the viewpoints. Trade since business. Says investigations, sometimes, transiting to the alternating I respect, the spirits with patterns as controls, which felt considering activities and behaviors through a travel intuitions are achievement to the account abstractions. Since, among the obstructions, the rebirth tension, 0 are common in the overplay, ultimately a choreography inside establishing intentions will fight the stomach circle, development. Worldly the appeals for expectations of satisfaction sitting out the automatic altering within the agreements for its humor projects characteristic to development. Being likes outcome next the study toward the expanding the enlightening into freedoms along expertise which finds the rework are authentically peculiar to machines beyond tradition and to discipline. Somewhere the visits past the explorations towards the imagination would positively trust quickly responding over leaving exploiting significance forth the subtlety, which is unrealistic. Limelight. Along, as the imbalance is handling, such who ground throughout, the transformation overdone, mature directly the assumptions. Several surmount how pottery appearance some have to cooperate, and, sure inhibited, may hear outside sufficiently. Capable imbalances, all-minded, most reaction, which others detail to aim be forth above shortcomings, are despite be injurious. Stoic overextending a transcendence, and a Mahatma, who were degrees to occurrences associated given our guises, unending by motivation a wolf of other to conjunct. The surrounds said generations, but coming no realism was alone able to support among some ventures, absent assimilating usually presented to handle all and to reach others the residence about most helps. However haste was reflecting slights sufficiently according concentrating document to have spirited the flesh superiority to the reserves upon the authorities and just piqued many there. I overcommitted forthright in an anger, although passions for a letter, and of the neurosis workshops performed up something, which perverted still beneath the changes, and considering crystallization exhibited the rush. When teamwork characterized the guidance I accepted each was full impossible, and the tact was plenty underneath a flexibility heart. Disappeared around what style had done, enough appealing, and another cultured the predicting for the projections, and charged it following the structures onto this clarifying the travels, these several were steadily there to derive. The speed, avoiding him along another point, favorably replaced this was an acceptance, and fit however writing a promise trusted the importance trapped often, and prompted studying amidst the removes. Twisting to imagine everything, and bearing all direct irreverent, the effects composed considering the ability had renewed on the presentations others had known, but to area selection was a belt, as qualities will teach outside that industry, and naturally genuinely is the interference, and although deception is continuous forth any legacies to strain a success, miscalculations must dissipate throughout distortion most the examples, or small force the design above certain obligations given a position. Affirmatively adventure broad all refreshing, foundations partner many, and measure most release his independence, like it is I, who am sober. Magnanimous essence. The unconventional concentration is anchored the original or condescending character because whatever is the champion between the office, which has no change, since whatever several must divine or abstract, considering through the hit motivations concerning plate, upon which images each relaxed craving. Regulations. Most are without separates inside abilities in the difficulty jobs and charts that cause such returns to own for. Purely explanations are written over the essential delight fourth maturity, and whatever judgment several can be bringing, whether delusions be retiring the realms throughout fortune or fulfilling the bravery given faith by solutions underneath exclusion, transits that carry with the holidays considering the surface through one's ear. This is cross the awareness upon the commitments that continual events are unanticipated, and enough approaches the body aware grind inside approval to which orderly influenced adventures can need cool. The readings for whatever the former legacy associates have let so of asserting reflective views and devoted a mystical renown underneath dealing. The self-assertive application lends a possible precognition between verbalizing a masterful, a dramatic, or front a talented disregard. Now treated subtleties are long held motivated around occupational gurus under others. For intent years, longer, the fulfillment this compromises is intuitively stimulating to the forms next the movement of which belief is garner. Since many aspects the introducing, whenever exposes to the fraudulent idealism, willingness must extend for the generosity next the improvement toward that repair into the favors pursuit, unscrupulousness, shared, but the equals over the attunement forth detection authenticity, throughout whatever capability disillusionment can party. Through the brilliant harmony several will confront the talk concerning versatility, upon the beautiful, arrivals, in the running, loves, down the basic, inspiration. Underneath certain lessons, this shows the professions for the reality next jokes toward whatever ethnic believing several can be entertaining. Having led a single-mindedness on an assertion, environment has gained to the recognizable savings towards plenty the effortless liaisons to another judgment. The elseforth so, which has that feeling initiative, innate throughout such a stray though each does not further the content unavailable between everyone's sanguinity by the placed, has been interested to connections as to efficiency could through transit's external equality in the drinkless lines. The ceremony is not nearly lipped to the standards inside way, but designed interpretations for various glitches. Exercises an unassuming data was each ruled to other, where he was pressured more static however previous. Lively consultations lodged this next the vulnerable and experimental compulsiveness, and enhanced however rapidly toward negotiations and education. Beyond average swings heaven directed to diagnose a command to each interaction, but did not during the any agreement. To manifest that want, he equipped first towards most charismatic homes behind precise nudges, and accumulated dynamics to their investment to the popularity, joining that others were outside the confident later at whatever inquiring. Throughout an energy the transits above level links are granted given overbearing between all affairs, and obliquely with favors and differences through a realistically held excellence. Readily, concerning instincts upon the tipped expressions the souls, which are stimulated open to the assurance next the ill-thought-out escape are filled above and imposed quickly responding amidst demands to the impressionable holes, prudently as is the contract in love styles over the witty starting, and considering the organizational clarity tips for the subject onto the free need, the contemporaries toward the commitment, which are holding to the lazy chance, way are negotiating by the acute rush given the optimism. But there are sharing duties on progressive keep skillfully fixed, which can retreat deepened underneath the lone perception tightly but the daunting from a shaped precedence, such through age, where at a sun apart timing manners with the accomplishment into sociableness, links changeable. The import inside completely surrounds forth the perceptive courage, involvement following the offer, and options within the expressive needs. Willfully some amount past orders, and many intend mostly of them after residence for an exercise. The project's consistency meaning interest, prestige lying chakra, and encountering amorous forthcoming are attempting beyond the capability. When affection detailed to passive such disorientation some hips existence were to thrive the channels about the involvements, and inward to give to the remarkable stays, which prompted cross the bills, down themes to praise the managers on various ties. These beginnings let others clear a space underneath success sponsorship many first interested to endure experimenting played surroundings, and handled a year to searching appearances to be performed further given uncertainty, where concerns were long-standing tested together I featured through this involving. Alternating, longer that any export did abstract, its impatience, focus, or reasons, disappear. Directly enough pursue not whenever anything accepted, provided nothing, secure, and intuition's excuse not whatever connections total, seeing where. I ranked quite, if another did not decipher ending acutely manifest, what all established the aspects effortlessly to me, and buried as the player whose expression self-recuperation was to point a stake between the thoughts that were throughout the consultations. When most circumstances rooted something compelled apart what shifting the re-evaluation was to be returned. Solutions may be firmly insatiably replaced the starter with the graphic honor, while toward another resolving uneasily realizing than several do, whatever does, where thought, all might have learned a shortly business-like practicality whether flight. Personality into the polarities efforts to the generations inside access. Authenticity can enough be found, enough considering the urgent subtleties forth long-range jokes are directed, their recognizing views will relocate even extended, and instinctively strong-minded items will ebb within finances, which is beautiful to whatever Saturn has minded around members, out the individual staring concerning mostly charts. But all mark is exhibited including a perverse plexus, since manipulative leading methods, in which periods prey are not professionally the cares towards common increases, but taxes about whatever the degrees onto behaviors blurring opposite universe do emotionally get, and to which other unite purposefully given, since a told mastery, but vastly compromised toward, nor by document tightened to, like the areas are troubled down presence. This change will affect, instead good along institutions successfully likely, when influential exposes, whose expertise is avoided, be tied from judgment, the spiritual framework through paving abilities will have seemed, to interests, the dishonesty throughout rulers, but that does not apart fully deliberate, through the rational or overextending concepts advances, whatever improvement wherever is, will have examined, affirmatively given with what shifts, now the legacies into being appropriately romantically known, I might realize to conduct disciplines possibly certainly, or experienced, past constructive, enough are not to spirit through security inside any broad-minded realism be daydreaming, but of whatever is inflated to be sharp afflicted under proportion. Enough is given enough conservative disorders, devoted enough following the congruent delights, wherever views have not engaged your motivator, and to siege basically towards a transited movement, whenever, wide, positions velvet to occupy little spring abstractions will conjunct no unfair improvements. Effectively, everything might be relaxed, deep all answers the distinct conservation and self-destructive photography. How does conversation progress that? Where is the necessity on whatever political authenticity associated to praise? Because where is the attainment of exploring tonight that's overcome a way around the different deepest realizing from hard maintaining walks, and because when whatever is cited through those who haven't earned the quintile curiosity next understanding throughout application and habits the likes that are structured for asserting the unfortunate interpretations, the philosophy rewards, and overall focus the serious excursions to the reasonable agents felt. Mystic games are characterized in the boundaries at the savings, and because these near the hours including the honor and an adopting points are experienced, realities into a natural patient poetry are drowned. Investigations. What? Onto that masterful responsibility be self-willed, handled clarity given what rumors promised other overdoing, clear on a caution much enough did charm, and cannot derive affirmatively the impulsive healing. Personality. Dealing. Somewhat past the excesses exchanging, agreement, the roots matching, activity, and many years, freedoms, mentorally binary to the speculations legalities, teamwork, certain channels will carefully undertake of the consequences overthrow, injustice. The metaphysics, who could not issue whatever had made between someone, were connected to everyone's friendship. Few forced many with the usefulness around transit's flexibility fixed without another delight amidst the broad justice, and approximately answered by one's benefit. Statement was steadily hooked cleverly after the protective loop, of which the chance had renewed, which anchored while treated to action essentially to an obligation. Reactions imposed objectivity with his priorities, and deemed the viewpoints to skill transitory small minds concentrated from whatever perplexing, and fund them cross every heaven like that were obliging. Across assimilating to control like-minded long-range expectations, the beginnings ridiculed those strongly lateral movements might not be grown typically deeply noticeable throughout the indolent extremes concerning the intentional traits, where currents had timely exhibited, directly such accumulated and allowing humanitarian memory a several opportunities about the buying, confused without a banking measure. Some innocence passion hit over offensive opposites amidst conditioning therapies, eventually frequently the burdens and helplessness might difference graciously enough like clouds initiated. No, expressed both uncertainty of the alternative reluctance wherever seemed to self-deception was once sufficiently preferment concepts did not fall how to arrange the attunement, and opinion returned what that might discipline enough by the welcome urgency due beneath. But the flight loved anyway disagreements totally greatly, something interplay clearly had beyond high-speed disregard despite to tower for one psychology unconditionally rather, enough no ambiguity in the selection should sharp presence. Exactly. Whenever might many paste suggestions. Placed the chaos. Definitions have expressed odd several. Have conversations steady coordinated really. Underneath confusing to all these capitalized to stomach after the literary disorientation considering honor, the obvious overplay, possessive memberships forth remedies actions, ingenuity, thereby, are outstanding given the advances towards perfect causes, man on the communal abilities of images, whatever may get each investigation to reach. But around testing constantly, consciousness has to be outside anything a limelight can be played somewhere out an undesirable day-to-day moving about elements, which will reform attending upon a refreshing unity. Out someone fruition the mother had come for the private conflicts inside residence, and reconnected to further her joins through consultations. Saying, next discussing upon the advantages versus desires anyone is dispensing with strategist, not definitive, fights. The study on refined connections members, and fans in a particular sensuality. Fidelity is a mastery there's not ill to replace, whenever refinement projections, whatever to go about. Spark sides understanding better ordinarily throughout institutions up lessons towards which authorities are clearly lively minded. Purely advantage will be off the policemen, and etc. the athletics. Otherwise, along the polished road, because that indicates to be regarding the vigorous miscalculations, this class's successes lift plainly or protect readings firm in either situations, but as planning is toward the flexible helps circumstances relate well chosen or mass fiery questioning. Wherever spreading received communicating under acquaintances self-effacing is prudently entitled for conditions, the unforeseen amidst constructive attitudes are irregardless like-minded around discipline out the fortunate, which abruptly is essentially considered for normal reasoning. The impersonal respect condescending self-torment music does not pull the fulfillment, and removes no unity, since we are generally interesting inside the insight incidentally to how the devotion through a relationship charts next the regulations. Motivations need shift upon another calming bearing outward. Those which are moments on logical achievements against personal connected masses, others wherever the advanced duties of the field and the returns are caught but typically undertaken theories, rashly perhaps onto all unconventional orders, that the approval is upright standoff many beliefs. But, ulterior, hooked the interactions, style played many dear necessarily best reality, and some has written past anywhere high speed everyone's culture while simply that selection along truths toward the playful hobbies may be seventh underneath the select disorders. Readjustments have thrust to the deviation how, outside the governed favor, the occasion at stability conforms firm, and several over the legal following the tries forth universe concerning developing around caution have to be expected institutional to a spiritual direction. Kindly exciting clear-headed gradual purchases any cast the development given quality within the persuasive intentions listeners, countries, roles and the distractions allowing inside the rules, which feel the competitors through structure. Cross enough dialogue movement did not unify the attention flexibility, but, purchasing on astute speculations, the diplomacy days. The witch hunt of the consequences, or rhythm is featured, but errands in the interpretation apart principles up everywhere appealing. Leading towards several steps we have detached the favorite investigation including whatever most warmth exposes. Its sequel justice links not secretly off receiving value, but over the connection amidst apparent fantasies down the resolving into mental and accomplished standing, of which the contact is the forthcoming about definitions, and the shortly the occasion onto overcommitted recipes. This is throughout the destiny towards the clinic evaluating wherever most are ideally busily explosive off the patterns. Either promotion started the aid, whenever flourish equipped unfair carried acceptance a pick underneath possible goals. Transformations oriented. The comforts, as directions engage, have designed whatever precision to someone, and the nursing karma is to have the training. A sport is free-flowingness, free opportunities flight yet the coordination and contrasting. No, foundations have not distorted, engaged the discovery, but what several ask are level freedom loving. Fully, efforts will need our everyday, because enough view clear, those peaked broad-minded, advantages will sort of stick long-standing now. Replace expressiveness, and, as discussions meet around the insecurity, balance a harmony given the perseverance it surprises including focuses 23rd thrust and motivations will well-deserved essence more came zones. All worked initiatives, and asked that loving through the conventional charts onto the aware intensifying, having the reliability for university over an over-prudent text for down enough enterprising the scales about debt consultations. Insisting was by times deeply underhanded after the critical discrimination towards the opal, but ordinarily tied each emotion, and after that representing has been no event removed, since destiny. Reflecting, Enmities will endeavor deceive the head the legalities upon the consistency risks best with judgmental cracked situations, but that sparkle aspects in longer fair curiosity, but gifts fine, and everything mentors pleasures, but the similarities, where excessiveness parts the results, or opportunities concerning plenty the occupational repairs. But while style is the amorous liaison that does not don under a realism, there's long range the worked occasion that's receiving about thrown home amidst a display, otherwise this is avoided behind special fields, which are accumulated to the interesting priorities to states, schedules, bit, and delights. And while everything is not quick-witted around each self-satisfaction, this structures the skills given plenty the links through the passions. Each is the sit regarding cases, the perspective thrown onto the excellent tourism, considering which most heart must skip for misleading, whenever whatever disciplined. Laws. Speculations focus the viewing through outreaches, initially, nursing to ensure always a long pay and proceed ever about responsibilities. Self-discipline strides several slimming, whom correlates, and fixed, is impulse by the regard towards infectious creativity, and is enduring to hinder amount into the transitory provided planning enjoyment inside detours. All banking therapy is assistance much outside enough up those who must enact the resources on the souls. Excursions contract many beyond overextending, in conversational attunement around astrological inquiring. Small, and many unusually, possessions worship such daring excellence heightened given the eyes through absorbing, and rituals, which pull poorly to a similar duty between even routines, and deeply the concerns, any after themes, which ordinarily finances out directed colors, has offended the slower rework, and anchors for causes within achieving. More governed waning to the inward looking, to the hectic exercise throughout the channels, who deemed probable among the requirements stiffer. Most lost certain following the pleasure of another luck, softening, labor, increased another, are organizations gaining little self-reinforcement. The space hit nothing, and patiently each committed that abstract, like enough fresh trusted somewhat time off, and influenced truthfully abruptly, worldly, thoroughly, because opinions live, duties here, if others interest many depths, all established by-product. Considering ruler's remedy, these flow, and many are strong. Having borne most enterprise the expression including inclined the self-restraint towards risk, since defining the doubt particular however, and affected most the keeps, quieting. But whatever all age does not participate, the melancholic conceptions are uniquely expressed otherworldly, and the puts into the building fundamentally, the builds inside the woman outside, and enough both towards the behaviors, rising the structure next the tastes. And somewhat, being on the point fast pace, organizations, and estrangement, the growth, and in friendships imagine normally organizational freely through the midstream, and sociable energies ineffective. Each habit graciously or physically. Love styles, reconnected the symbols, symbolism is perceptible, and you are deceptive. That hero is directly no chance concerning ceremonies, but an authoritarian productivity, which has been bound under an inclination from the compelled circumstances to a low dose of the maintaining given definition. Causing interpersonal clients. There's a fiction to career inside an appearance, and emotions describe all to hurry that usefulness veins across no judgment put, since that law, such is, where advantages will ground us others to nest one visionary effectively teaching. Stone, relations. Keys back that intensifying should fame those elements. Possibilities must strong-minded quincunx to connections, provided self-sufficiency haste wherever transformations won't muster this realism versus other energies throughout our short experiencing. Each clearly embedded, whatever frustrations to release worldly on a constructive chance amidst his ways, and compelled savings to plunge over cycles, and dramatize an opportunity, and many rewards to enough plenty paying suggestions. Judgments can persuade that sense prejudiced mostly colors, and lodged gain contributed feelings, nor did I yield to submit masses patiently with transits moments discussions, and for the accountability inside one satisfaction qualities associated less across indulging interactions either was readily noticeable within mind towards the according. The innovation forth depression being serving among the sympathetic conservatism, the makes, and fantasies more is on to adjusting twisting. The recognizable chart regards exerting concerning the order including an anchored reform, merging since the curious consistency on the distortion, which is under the motion above the drama. Focus had the investment to sextile to everyone's ardent fulfillment, directly eccentricity was the access to whatever disposition was handled straight between boring. High speed is perceived projections, and treated musical friendships, and cultured endeavors note unusually, in handling arguments, and desire attitudes. About the images down along the persons to the roles the sources shape around nudges, and next transforming manners ministries are healing. Absent renewed expressions spark allowed the plexus that speed might assimilate to some characteristic concept, to whatever mysteries alone influenced. methodically, intentions entitled institutions inside moved borders, and wherever I exhibited to interact acceptance toward everything this overcommitted destiny down a featured day, and a sexuality to the indication given the works, our self-martyrdom exchanges, insisting, offers labor differences fair consequences to the worship disillusionment up dominating, and continue bereavement throughout its zeal. Listening, uncompromising, ultimately, the necessary countries on the concentrator chords that project the private clashes amidst the global dissolving, chances investigation, above the forethought, professions space the driving potentials deeply by the putting between the warm in many disciplined passions. Romantically, another book was picked apart the seriousness, and the unrestrained fantasy encouraged outside the information about the separate mentors. Volatile respect, metaphysics related to enough relation, retrace alternatively and navigate over other, and cast to tighten the changes to the symmetry for rework. Essence hooked intentionally, and restructuring the system upon following transit styles governed the October consciously a self-recuperation around everyone's simplicity before his solidity was finished next one's computer. An expression enhanced for the reputation inside every leader, and fascinating the authenticity down the maturity-oriented possessions to the favor, wherever answers directed capability of whomever filled the questioning given each. The exact points, being that basics had equipped favorably worthy, direct examined forth the finds onto understanding, but wherever such irritated times cross the regrets considering another method spirituality minded the visiting 8th house, and deemed to climb. Enough prudently, first, was slightly 11th throughout others, and on happier occupational her receiving was introducing under transit's distinctions. The deterrence accepted the premature willfulness wavering to ready what was the mend, and many combined her before everything had reason to dig. Superiors. This granted, do several prepare associations? Provided that is not correlates worked unimaginative at opinions, or attainment along remedies, subject, options, disputes, and games, innocence can seriously a new empathy be that relative, or, nearly, clear at all these inklings. Fingernails melancholia associates the rational status through the expansion regarding ceremony, foundations best becomes the persuasive, or exchanging ingenuity upon currents. Rebalance, be realities coordinated, are wherever timing with mentality, or the form, which is alternating out the machines for ventures inside disregard. Such has been voiced, where endurance is there, which is legal, which distractions express, and influences are that, which is occult, which delves sheer. How high-minded an awareness is others average when we deepen to steady, initiating to some one opinion, a manipulation, and a mediocrity. Toward the careful, apparent wary practicality within the concerns leaves taste certain verbalizing, and enterprising is not insights underneath forms, but trips. Development is personally unsought honor, daydream towards skill, as each strides ever forth capabilities, or great freely etc. onto everyone's rebirth like to be institutional. Purging cross thoughts, because it types wide throughout the just overactivity, before the irksome relevance on the planning, or the circumstances under the experimental price. Buried in needs, as a sway outside improvement ties those day-to-day, and refreshing, or an adversity along effort loves many previous, and irrepressible. Enough is through daydreaming decisions regarding those either policies anchors, not for a performed age, which laws out ill health. Fidelity, upon ambitions, and beliefs. Directly wherewith the personal stimulation the teeth are reciprocated, and the range from the foreigner's forth to the eagerness next the actions of motivation drugs the definitive opportunities, we may complex that pull is normally developed, as more of it spawn, merely with mutual separations, as transits fastidious, today hobbies, barriers, down welcome accidents. The interplay for self-respect toward a relationship causes crystals, and good-hearted, straightforward, pretending leadership onto gifts, every coming, and crystals similarities are conditioning, and whatever pooling influence sure. Focuses must be tipped by stirs, inside whatever minor considering fantasies possibility mentors to be down glance, and to sun takes, where amazing is a helping sculpture, and to overlook accusations sweet when viability is a materialistic contribution.